It's time for vacations and trips. And a number of us have been on different trips and different places, but we all know that there's a difference between a vacation and a trip. Am I right? For a vacation, you do certain things like this. You sit, you relax, and the toughest decision is whether or not or when to take a nap. But we've all been on trips, right? And on a trip, it looks a little more like this. Where you're running, you're go, 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 you're seeing as many things as you can possibly see, you're visiting all the museums, you drive until you can't stay awake anymore, you're planning out the next day, you're going to as many places as possible, you're trying to experience everything that there is in that place to understand everything that it has in store because you want to learn and want to know and want to see and want to do. It's nonstop. That's a trip. This journey through the Bible that we're on, I think, is more like a trip than a vacation. Because we're not just sitting, relaxing, waiting for something. We are going, and we're moving, and we're constantly stopping in different places, trying to get this big picture of who God is and who God created us to be. And so we don't just sit and relax in one place for a while. We're hopping and skipping and moving constantly to different places, each one of those places contributing to this big picture about God and about us. So we rarely dig in deeply to one place or another because we're constantly trying to get this big picture from all these different places. So it can be a little frustrating because we're not relaxing anywhere. But the upside is we get this full picture because we're seeing everything. And we're trying to see it in a very short amount of time. So this trip is kind of a high-paced trip, but that's why you can fill in the blanks if you want to by reading some of these other places. Now, just like every well-visited, popular tourist destination, the big picture has some of these too as we read through the Bible. And those places have what we call interpretive signage. You've seen interpretive signage, right? These signs that are at national parks or in certain places in historic cities that are explaining what it is that you're seeing or giving you like the historical or the ecological background or the scientific something, whatever you're looking at, or the history on it. So it's explaining the kinds of things you're seeing. Well, in the passage we're looking at, the Beatitudes today, there's actually a lot of interpretive signage about this passage. The challenge is, it's not all the same. If you go to one place, you read an interpretive signage about the Beatitudes and it says one thing, and if you go to another place and you see some interpretive signage about the Beatitudes, it says a completely different thing. There are sermons, there are teachings, there are books, there are articles, there are all kinds of things that are written and produced and done on the Beatitudes, trying to interpret them and understand what they are, and the challenge is they're all different. I mean, one sign will say, Jesus is presenting in the Beatitudes a list of things for us to work really hard at so that we can get into heaven. And then there's another sign that says, Jesus is talking about long-term future, about something that might happen then, so just sit tight and wait. And then there's another one that might say, well, Jesus is saying, this is all happening here and now, so get busy. I mean, you look at these signs and you say, is everybody reading the same passage? Because we got all these different interpretive signs that are giving all sorts of different messages. And if we read one, we're going to go really hard and get busy at work. And if we read another, we're just going to sit and wait for God to do something else. And so what interpretive sign we read affects how do we respond to that? And what do we do? And how busy do we get? And how hard do we work? So which one is it? Which interpretive sign is it? Which one do we follow? Well, I think one of the benefits of reading this passage in the context of our big picture is that we're getting the Beatitudes not just as this isolated passage that we pluck out of nowhere, but we're looking at it in light of all the things that God has said in the Old Testament and all the things that God is teaching us throughout the Bible, and we get to see it's not just some random passage or thing that Jesus said. This is part of God's long-term story that God is trying to tell us. And if that's the case, then what does it mean? And what's the interpretive sign if it's part of God's greater story? So we're going to look at it like that. And hopefully we'll get a clearer interpretive sign. If we don't, I'm out of a job. So let's give this a shot. So first the passage. Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountain and sat down. The disciples came to him and he began to teach them. One more time. He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, because they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." It is no wonder that there are different interpretive signs, because this is kind of cryptic stuff. They're repeated passages, they sort of sound the same, and Jesus is talking in sort of general terms, and some of it's a bit confusing, so it's no wonder that there's different signs out there. And we've encountered this before, where there's a passage that we come to that's not abundantly clear. And when we come to passages like these, I'm a fan of doing something specific. And the specific thing is not starting with what we don't know. Because if we start with what we don't know, we inevitably will get to the wrong place. But if we start with what we do know, then we're more likely to find a good spot where we land. So let's start with what we do know. And let's start by asking some of those 5 basic questions. Who, what, when, where, and why, as we look at the passage. So, who? Who's here, and what are they doing? Who's here? Well, we see in the beginning of the passage that Jesus is talking to who? He's talking to the disciples. The disciples are obviously there. So Jesus is teaching the disciples. And he went up this mountain to get away from this crowd. So there's sort of a crowd, but then he's talking to the disciples. If we jump all the way to the end of the passage of this whole speech that Jesus gives, we find out who else is there too. Matthew 7:28 says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings. So the crowds were there, and the disciples were there. Now it's fair also to ask, not just who was there, but who's not there. Who's not there? If it's the disciples and the crowd, who's not there? Well, there's a whole lot of religious leaders and educated people and experts of the law and all these other people that are specifically named in other places that are not named here. A few of them could have been there, we don't know for sure, but they probably would have been named if they were there. And it's interesting that the people who Jesus is talking to are not the people who are in Jerusalem, the experts, the educated, the religious elite, all these people. He was talking to the average person and to his followers. So we'll log that away. That's who. So what? What is Jesus teaching? Jesus is not telling a story. Jesus is not telling history. This isn't like some of those historical books. This isn't a story that Jesus is teaching to teach a lesson. I mean, this sounds different. It's a different kind of, different style of writing, isn't it? Is there part of the Bible that this kind of sounds like, or the rhythm of it sounds like something else in the Bible? Another part of the Bible? Does it sound anything like Proverbs to you? Or sound kind of like some wisdom literature? I mean, because he's repeating this, blessed are you, blessed are those. And it's got that rhythm to it. It's kind of poetic. So Jesus is doing something that's different. But every single line starts with, blessed are you, blessed are those. So clearly Jesus is trying to teach us something with this whole idea of blessed are. And so what's he trying to teach? Well, this whole idea of blessing is something that was usually given to people who were the upper crust of society. Before and in the time of Jesus, if you were called blessed, it meant you were rich, you had everything you needed, you were perfectly righteous, and you really didn't have anything to worry about. Is that the crowds and the disciples? Probably not. They were not in those camps. They were not in those categories. So they were not the people who usually got called blessed. And now what are they getting called? They're getting called blessed. So Jesus is doing something brand new here. He's telling something that they've never heard before. They're telling him something, he is telling them something that they don't tend to hear. Jesus is calling them blessed. So that's what he's teaching. He's teaching them that they are blessed. So let's jump to the next word. We got who, we've got what, we need when. When is this happening in the book of Matthew? This is actually fascinating. When are these teachings happening? Because these are the first words of Jesus that Matthew presents. This is the first teaching of Jesus that Matthew gives us. He does a lot of other stuff beforehand, but he says, as he's telling the story of Jesus, these are the first words I want you to hear of Jesus. So these words, they carry some weight according to Matthew. They're like, if this is the first thing that Jesus says, it's going to be good. And let me tell you what it is. So these to Matthew are the words that we're supposed to hear first from Jesus. One of the things I also like about Matthew is Matthew's really simple. Because I think Matthew wrote his book with the goal that we would walk away knowing two things. That we would know about Jesus, that Jesus has total authority and full ability. So Matthew structures his whole book around this idea that if we read this whole book, that we walk away, if we don't know anything else, we know that Jesus has total authority and full ability. And if we walk away with that, Matthew wins. He's done his job. And so Matthew structures his whole book like this. The first 3 chapters, and we won't go through them all in detail, but the first 3 chapters are all about Jesus' authority. It's about the wise men coming, it's about Jesus' family history, it's about John the Baptist announcing Jesus. I mean, it's all about this guy. If anybody has authority, he has all of God's authority. And then chapter 4 talks more about his ability. Chapter 5, 6, and 7, which is the speech. And then chapters 8 and 9 are all about miracles and healings and things that Jesus does, showing his ability to do this stuff that he's talking about. It's all about Jesus' authority to do anything and his ability to do anything. So when Jesus is talking, Matthew's already built up this fact that Jesus has all the authority and all the ability to do anything, even the impossible. And so if Jesus says you're going to be blessed even though you're not the kind of people who are usually blessed, guess what? It's actually possible for God to bless anybody. Even normal, average people like you and me who aren't usually called blessed. That's kind of cool. That Jesus has all the authority and all the ability to bless me and you and anybody who doesn't deserve it. Okay, so that was, I think, when. How about where? Where does this happen? Easiest question of the day. Where does this whole speech happen? Up on a mountain. That's right. It's up on a mountain. Now, we in California know mountains. We've got big ones over there. This was not a mountain. This was a hill. And this is probably more of what it looked like. It's a little 300-400 foot hill. This is like Rocky Hill. So this should be called, instead of Sermon on the Mount, this should be called Sermon on the Hill. But Sermon on the Hill isn't a snappy name, so Sermon on the Mount seems to stick. So this got called Sermon on the Mount. Other question. Where are they also? Where is this hill that they're on? Is it in Jerusalem? Is it in Jerusalem? No. Is it in Galilee? Yeah, this is in Galilee. Now, why would Jesus be talking? First speech of Jesus, most powerful words of Jesus, the things that we need to hear. Why would Jesus not be saying this in Jerusalem? Because the people of God are in Jerusalem. This is God's house. This is God's space. This is where the people are. So why is Jesus not giving the speech there? Well, because they wouldn't hear it. We find that through the rest of the Gospels, they're not listening. They're not hearing Jesus. So he goes all the way up to a new place, in this place of Galilee. This is the crowd's place, the average person's place, the outsider's place, and he gives the talk there. I mean, doesn't that fit with all the other stuff? The who, the what, the when? I mean, it's all fitting together. Jesus is giving this amazing talk about God doing unusual things to unusual, unlikely people, and they're getting blessed. Even the people who are outside the space where God is supposed to be. Okay, so why? Why is Jesus doing this? Why does he go all the way up there? Why does he talk about this? Why is he talking to these people? Why is Jesus doing this? My high school AP history teacher was named Mr. Matthews, which actually I think is kind of cool because we're studying Matthew. But anyway, his name is Mr. Matthews. And Mr. Matthews I really liked. Mr. Matthews was fairly young as far as most of the teachers at my high school went. He rode his red 10-speed bike to school every day, which I also liked. Mr. Matthews had several fairly young children at home, so he kind of talked a lot on our level. We understood him pretty easily. Mr. Matthews had it together. He always had a plan. He always knew exactly what he was teaching. And when that bell rang, we better be ready to start. Mr. Matthews was on task. He never wasted a minute in class, and he was constantly teaching us new and different things about history. Now, he was my U.S. history teacher, which means we spent a lot of time on the Revolutionary War and learning about how America became America. And leave it to Mr. Matthews to not do the typical thing. So instead of just teaching us about the Revolutionary War like we had learned about it, he decided, all of you Americans, we can't just learn about this from an American perspective. So he gave us 2 textbooks. He gave us a textbook about U.S. history written by and published by Americans. And then he gave us a textbook about U.S. history written by British people and published in Britain. And we read the 2 side by side. And so, you read U.S. history and you read about how the U.S. conquered the British and how we secured our territory and became an independent nation, and we learned about all these amazing things. And then you read the English textbook. It's not the same story. I mean, they're not talking about being conquered and how America became great. They're like, no, we just changed our attitude toward America. I mean, it's a totally different story. And Mr. Matthews enlightened us to these new ways of thinking that the same story can be told in a lot of different ways. And so you got to read wisely. And it's because of this and lots of other things that Mr. Matthews did that if there's any person that I would believe pretty much anything he says, it's Mr. Matthews. Because to him, I believe that he has total ability, total authority, and full ability. Kind of like Jesus. And whatever Jesus says, because he's got total authority and full ability, I'm liable to believe it. So when Jesus does these crazy things like saying, you unusual, unlikely people who don't live in the right spot and it's a weird time, you are blessed, I'm liable to actually believe that that's true. But it makes me wonder, well, why is he blessing them? And why is he, in turn, telling us that we are blessed? I mean, what is this all about? Why are we blessed? What is this for? Well, what does he say at the beginning and the end of these blessings? It's not every one, but it's the first one and the last one. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then the almost last one, blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The reason the way he's blessing us is saying, yours is the kingdom of heaven. And we go, well, we don't talk about kingdoms, so what are you talking about? Because in their day, they talked about kingdoms. They had kings, they had rulers, they had kingdoms, they know what that felt like. We don't deal with kingdoms. So what's the kingdom? What's the feel? What's the point of the kingdom? The kingdom is like a family. It's a secure place. Somebody's in charge of it. It's a good place to be, and it's got a future. Jesus is saying, blessed are you unlikely, odd people who don't have the background and don't live in the right spot, and you've tried some things and they haven't all worked, but you know what? You're blessed because yours is the family of God. We get to be part of the family of God. Not because we've done the right things, not because we're great and excellent and mighty and powerful and from the right family. We get to be part of the family of God because Jesus said so. We get to be part of it because God is blessing us. This whole idea of blessing comes from this word of kneeling. When you bless, you kneel because you're giving honor to somebody else and you're giving them a gift that they don't deserve. So when you bless somebody, you kneel. Who's doing the blessing in this talk of Jesus? Who's doing the action of blessing? Who is blessing? It's God. God is blessing us. So it's like God is kneeling before us to say, you are welcomed into the family of God. Is that crazy? That God would kneel for us so that we could have something we don't deserve? Man, I don't deserve that. But God does it because God wants us in the family of God. Does this sound similar? Because it sure does to me. About all the things that we've been studying throughout the Old Testament, like God has worked so incredibly hard over and over again and fought for us so that we could have a relationship with God. It's just like Jesus is saying it in other words. He's saying kingdom of God or family of God or you're welcomed in and you're blessed. And God's like, yeah, I've been telling you this for thousands of years. You are welcomed into the family of God. You are my children. I don't know if you need that encouragement or you need that word, or if there's somebody that you know that needs that reassurance. That you know what? It's not because of who you are or how good you are or how many things you've done. It's because God simply wants a relationship with you, and He wants you to want a relationship back with Him. Until everybody in the world has the kind of relationship that Jesus is picturing here, this needs to be repeated over and over. Who needs to hear, blessed are you, because God loves you, and you're welcomed into the family of God. If it's you, hear it. If it's somebody else, tell it. Let's pray.